Okay, let's unpack this. We are embarking on an intensive deep dive into the world of Dan Harmon. Complex, brilliant, often controversial.
Absolutely. A writer, producer, comedian. I mean, he's really shaped a lot of television over the last couple of decades.
Especially with meta-comedy, giving us these genre-bending classics like Community and, of course, the absolute phenomenon that is Rick and Morty.
Right. And we've got a great stack of sources here. They really trace his whole journey, from his early days in Chicago, sketch comedy,
Midwest roots, yeah.
all the way up to his current, well, animation empire, really. But the real nugget here, the thing we really want to dig into for you, is the technique he uses.
This specific method for building pretty much every story he tells.
Exactly. So our mission today isn't just like a biography. We need to get under the hood, dissect the engineering that makes his stories tick.
And that's this specific, quite rigid 8-step writing framework. It's almost like a storytelling cheat code he developed.
Yeah, the story circle. That's what it's called.
So for you listening, the idea is to go beyond just, enjoying the surface chaos of his shows.
Right, the zaniness.
And understand the actual structure that holds it all together. We're going to explore how this almost compulsive drive for structural symmetry,
using his story circle,
how that became the bedrock for these global hits, these really culturally relevant shows.
It really is a fascinating paradox, isn't it? This sort of controlled explosion of creativity.
Okay, so where do we start? Let's light the fuse.
Well, Daniel James Harmon, born January 3rd, 1973, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Grew up there, soaked in that kind of distinct Midwestern humor.
Brown Deer High School, then Marquette University for a bit.
Right, those are the early years. But maybe the single most creatively significant biographical stop actually came later, and way further west.
You're talking about Glendale Community College in California.
Exactly.
Which is just one of those perfect examples, isn't it? A writer taking something totally mundane from their own life.
Yeah, a brief stint at community college.
And turning it directly into the premise, the actual setting for Community. 6 seasons, critically acclaimed, all from that one experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you look at the period before that, say 1996 through 2008, you can really see him laying the groundwork for his counterculture style.
He was really involved in the improv and sketch scene back in Milwaukee, right?
Deeply embedded. He was a member of Comedy Sports, and that's where he really teamed up with Rob Schrab, his longtime collaborator.
And they were in that sketch troupe, the Dead Alewives.
That's them. They even put out an album in '96, Take Down the Grandmaster, really codified their style.
We probably need to pause here, though, and talk about the kind of comedy he was doing, the tone he set early on.
Oh, yeah. Definitely boundary pushing.
Our sources point specifically to this one routine he did back at Milwaukee's Safe House Free comedy stage. It was a song.
A very memorable song about masturbation.
Yeah.
Quite graphic.
Right, and you can see even then he was establishing this thing where his comedy wouldn't shy away from the super personal, the awkward, the self-loathing, that kind of cringe humor.
It really sets the stage, doesn't it?
Yeah.
For the kind of painful self-awareness you see later in characters like Jeff Winger or even Rick Sanchez.
Yeah.
That vulnerability mixed with sharpness.
Exactly. But what's interesting is while that early stuff was maybe chaotic and pushing boundaries,
His professional focus pretty quickly seemed to shift towards, like, controlling that chaos, putting structure around it.
which brings us to Channel 101.
Right. The real collaborative launchpad.
Yeah.
He co-founded that with Rob Schrab.
And Channel 101, it wasn't just a website, was it? It was more like an alternative TV network, a proving ground.
Yeah, exactly. Writers, directors, they had to create these short pilots,
Yeah.
like 5 minutes long, every month.
And the audience voted.
Yeah. If they liked it, you got to make another episode next month. If not, canceled immediately.
Wow. Talk about pressure. That's like merciless, structured, short-form storytelling boot camp.
It absolutely was. A crucible for structure, like you said. And it actually birthed some real cult hits.
Like Heat Vision and Jack. That pilot.
That's the most famous one, yeah. Starring Jack Black and Owen Wilson. Huge cult following.
Incredible.
And Harmon was also involved in other stuff there, like the web series Yacht Rock. He actually acted in that one.
He did. What was he?
He played this highly fictionalized version of the music producer Ted Templeman, talking about soft rock history, the Doobie Brothers.
Okay, that's amazing. But you can see how that hyper-specific, disciplined approach at Channel 101.
It really paved the way for more mainstream stuff.
Right. because then he co-created and was head writer for the Sarah Silverman program on Comedy Central for a while.
Yeah, started flexing those muscles in TV. And features, too. He co-wrote the screenplay for Monster House.
Which got nominated for an Oscar, right? For animation.
It did. And
Yeah.
the film work continued in some surprising places.
Yeah.
He's actually credited with writing part of Rob Schraub's comic book series, Scud, the disposable assassin.
Really? The comic book.
Yeah, and in the spin-off, La Cosa Nostroid. And then kind of showing his utility in the studio system, he did uncredited work on big movies.
Like Kung Fu Panda in 2008.
Exactly. So these early years, they're not just, a list of jobs. They show someone mastering different fields: improv, sketch, web series, animation structure.
And then applying those structural lessons to whatever came next, even if it seemed totally different.
Precisely. That incredible versatility, that structural focus, it leads directly into the Community years.
Which is really where his, let's say, personal and professional conflicts came right out into the open. The high price of being the author, the showrunner.
Yeah. Community launched in 2009 on NBC. Harmon was the showrunner, executive producer for those first 3 seasons.
And he was just pouring everything into it. The show was already meta just by its premise, right? His own experience.
But he layered on top of that just incredible structural complexity, pop culture references, self-awareness.
It was dense.
Very dense.
Yeah.
And while it was a critical darling, this phenomenon of intricate comedy, it was apparently notoriously difficult to make.
You hear stories. Harmon's process sounds like it was intense, very hands-on. Obsessive, maybe?
And often combative,
Mm.
especially with network notes, executive oversight. He fought for his vision.
And that conflict, well, it boiled over
Yeah.
very publicly, May 2012.
Yep. Harmon gets abruptly fired from his own show.
Yeah.
The official reason given was creative conflicts with Sony executives.
And for the fans, I mean, the Community fan base was and is incredibly devoted. That felt like it. The darkest timeline had arrived for you.
It was a huge rupture,
Yep.
professionally, personally. But what's fascinating is how the narrative that followed kind of mirrored the structures he loves.
How so?
Well, the audience, the community around the show, they rallied
Yeah.
fiercely. Season 4, without him.
It just didn't feel right. His absence was obvious.
Oh, people noticed.
Definitely. And then, June 2013, he officially confirms he's coming back. Co-show running season 5 with Chris McKenna. It was like the darkest timeline averted, the brightest timeline restored. The hero returns. But even with him back, and the critics liking it again, NBC still canceled it after season 5.
Right. But then, this is where the changing media landscape kicks in, that fan devotion. It translated into this unusual streaming revival. Yahoo. Screen, of all places.
Yeah, remember Yahoo? Scream.
They picked it up for a 13-episode 6th season in 2014. It was one of the early, really powerful examples of a fan community basically willing a show back into existence.
6 seasons and a movie. That became the rallying cry.
And that legacy, that phrase, it still fuels hope. Our sources actually confirm a 2024 update that the script for the long promised Community movie is apparently ready.
Wow. So the project is actually in the works. For real this time.
Seems like it. The script exists, things are moving.
Okay, but let's rewind a bit. Back to that crucial time right after he got fired in 2012. His professional life is in chaos.
Right. And he transitions into something really interesting. Part therapy, part performance art, part another structural experiment. The podcast Harmontown.
Which had started before, hadn't it? Monthly?
Yeah, it started back in May 2011, just monthly. But the moment he got fired from Community, boom, he ramps it up. Weekly, cathartic, public.
With Jeff B. Davis co-hosting. It became this sort of public forum for him to work through his stuff, his anxieties, his creative ideas.
Exactly. And what's really crucial about Harmontown, especially for his later work, is how it cemented the influence of Dungeons & Dragons.
Ah, the RPG segment.
Yeah. Every show had this long, extended segment where they played pen and paper role-playing games. Started with D&D, then they switched to Shadowrun.
With Spencer Crittenden as the game master.
Right. And this wasn't just like a fun diversion. It became a core structural element of the podcast itself.
It gave it a framework, right, for all the spontaneous talk and chaos.
A necessary, rigid framework for spontaneous storytelling. And it got so popular that segment directly inspired the animated series Harmon Quest.
And there's a documentary, too, wasn't there? Also called Harmontown.
Yeah, that followed their tour in early 2013. Premiered at South by Southwest in 2014. The podcast itself eventually ended in December 2019, but for that period after the firing, it was his lifeline, a place to channel the chaos into something structured, something entertaining.
Okay. This brings us right to it. The core takeaway. The mechanism, the engine that lets all that turbulence, biographical, creative, resolve into stories that actually work.
Yes.
The story circle.
Yes. This is the blueprint, the thing you really need to understand about how he operates.
So where did it come from?
It's a really elegant piece of structural thinking. Harmon developed it back in the late 90s. He said he was struggling with a screenplay. And he recognized that a lot of the writers and directors he worked with, especially maybe at Channel 101 later, they struggled with traditional narrative frameworks. You know, they can feel kind of sprawling, intimidating.
Like the hero's journey stuff, Camel.
Exactly. So he wanted to find a simpler, more symmetrical way to codify that underlying structure.
Yeah.
The thing that powers all great stories, basically.
So he took Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, which is, you know, deep and mythological, but maybe not super practical if you're staring at a deadline.
Right. It can feel overwhelming.
And he simplified it, distilled it down.
Into this accessible 8-step circular process designed to reliably crank out coherent narratives. Especially useful, he thought, for his Channel 101 collaborators who needed practical plotting tools fast.
He said it was like tattooed on his brain, right? Because it applies to everything.
Yeah, it's universality. Any character, any story, short, sketch, feature film, TV episode, you can map it onto the circle. Let's walk through the steps. Imagine it like a clock face starting at the top, 12 o'clock.
Okay. Step 1.
A character is in a zone of comfort or familiarity. This is just the starting point. The status quo, their normal world.
Got it. Baseline established.
Yeah.
Step 2.
They desire something. There's a need, an itch, something they want, internally or externally. And crucially, this desire upsets the balance of step 1. It creates the impulse to move.
Makes sense. Step 3.
They enter an unfamiliar situation. This is crossing the threshold, leaving the known world, going into the unknown. Sometimes it's literal, like jumping through a portal in Rick and Morty.
Or it could be metaphorical, like joining a study group with strangers in community.
Exactly. Unfamiliar territory. Step 4. They adapt to that situation. They have to learn the rules of this new world, survive the initial challenges, overcome hurdles. This is often where the character confronts their flaws or maybe learns new skills.
Okay, adapting. Then step 5.
They get that which they wanted. They achieve the goal they set out for back in step 2. This is often like the midpoint climax of the central achievement, a temporary high maybe.
Success. But then, step 6.
They pay a heavy price for. Yes, the consequence. This is often the real climax or the darkest point. The true cost of the journey is revealed. Moral compromises, painful realizations, actual losses.
Okay, step 7.
The return to their familiar situation, the journey back home, bringing the prize or the knowledge or maybe just the scars from the ordeal.
And finally, step 8.
They have changed as a result of the journey. The circle completes. A new status quo is established, but the character isn't quite the same person they were back in step 1. They've learned something, grown, or maybe just been permanently altered.
Okay, listing the steps is helpful, but let's see it in action. Because just knowing the steps isn't the same as seeing how he uses it. Like, take that famous Community episode, Remedial Chaos Theory.
Oh, perfect example. The one with the dice roll creating 7 different timelines.
Yeah. How does the circle apply there, like, instantly?
Okay, so step 1. The comfort zone is just the gang hanging out in the apartment. Simple gathering.
Right. Step 2. The desire. Someone needs to go get the pizza downstairs. Simple goal.
Then step 3. Entering the unfamiliar. Whichever character the dice chooses leaves the room. They enter the unfamiliar situation of the hallway, or just being separated, initiating that timeline's unique chain of events.
Okay. Step 4. Adapting. They adapt to whatever chaos unfolds in the room while they're gone, or deal with what happens in the hallway.
Step 5. They get what they wanted, they grab the pizza. Got it. Step 6. The heavy price.
That's the timeline collapsing, or descending into the darkest timeline where everything goes wrong. Pierce gets shot. Troy loses his larynx.
Right, the bad stuff. Step 7. Return.
They come back into the room, returning to the familiar situation. And step 8. The change.
Well, in that episode, it's often Abed realizing the implications or the group collectively understanding the potential for that darkest timeline, right?
Right.
But the core group is usually reset for the next role.
Exactly. It's contained. The change allows them to maybe avoid the worst outcome next time, but the fundamental group dynamic is preserved. It's micro-level application over and over.
And he's talked about the deeper meaning behind this, right? Not just the mechanics, but the why, especially around entering the unfamiliar part.
Oh, yeah. He gets quite philosophical. He specifically references Campbell again when talking about steps 3 and 4, entering that unfamiliar situation.
And what does Campbell call it?
Campbell evokes the image of the hero entering a digestive tract, the underworld, the belly of the whale.
where the hero is broken down, stripped of their everyday tools and defenses, their neuroses, their fears, their modern comforts, like, asthma inhalers, credit cards, cell phones.
Because none of that stuff works down there.
Exactly. It can't save him in the unconscious basement of the unfamiliar. The purpose of this stage, Harmon argues following Campbell, is forced simplification.
So,
To survive that bottom half of the circle, the character has to become refreshingly and frighteningly simple. They have to rely on core instincts, basic truths.
that makes so much sense for Rick Sanchez. All his genius tech often fails him, and he's forced into these really raw, simple, emotional, or physical fights.
Precisely. The sci-fi chaos is just the setting for that forced digestive process, stripping him down.
And it's not just Campbell influencing him, right? There are others.
Definitely. You can see echoes of Christopher Vogler's book, The Writer's Journey. Vogler specifically wrote that to translate Campbell's ideas for screenwriters. Made it very practical.
And Sid Field, the classic screenwriting guru.
Yeah, the influence of Field's structural analysis is there too. Harmon absorbed all these ideas about acts and plot points and distilled them even further into his functional, symmetrical wheel. He often points to Star Wars as a film that consciously uses that hero's journey template.
Okay, so he has this powerful, universal structure, but then he makes this really crucial distinction about how you apply it differently for movies versus TV.
This is key. This is, I think, the secret to his success and longevity in television.
So what is the difference? How does he use the circle differently?
Well, he explained it pretty clearly. A feature film's job is basically structural completion. It needs, in his words, to send you out of the theater on a high in 90 minutes.
Right. You want that satisfying ending, that permanent change in the character after the journey. Step 8 needs to feel final.
Exactly. The story circle achieves its full, permanent, satisfying Step 8 change in a movie. But television, especially a series that's meant to run for years and years, its job is different.
What's its job, according to Harmon?
To keep you glued to the television for your entire life, his words.
Okay, so if the show needs to be renewable, basically infinite, you can't let the characters change too much or permanently solve their core problems.
Exactly right. The difference lies almost entirely in how you handle Step 8 for television.
So how do you handle it?
For TV, Harmon argues, the focus of Step 8 is less about permanent, fundamental character growth, riling things up definitively, and more about getting things back to where they started, at least emotionally or situationally.
The reset button.
Kind of. The character learns a lesson,
Oh.
maybe, often a painful one. But the core conflict, the essential flaw or dynamic that drives the whole show's premise, that has to remain mostly intact. So the circle can begin again next week.
So Rick and Morty have these insane universe-altering adventures.
Right. They go through the whole circle, pay heavy prices.
But at the end of the episode, or maybe the season arc, Rick is still fundamentally a brilliant, damaged, cynical guy, and Morty is still fundamentally his anxious, morally conflicted grandson.
Pretty much. Step 8 brings them back, maybe slightly altered, maybe with a new memory or trauma, but ready for the next cycle. The engine needs to keep running.
That is structurally brilliant. Kind of cynical, maybe, but brilliant. Manipulating the final step of the narrative engine to ensure episodic stasis or slow change, allowing for infinite content.
It's incredibly effective for long-form serialized storytelling. And that approach, that structural thinking, it fueled the creation of his animation work, which often ran parallel to Community.
Right, Starburns Industries.
Yep. He co-founded that in 2010, actually during the first season of Community.
And one of his partners was Dino Stamatopoulos.
Who played Starburns on Community.
Of course. Perfect Harmon meta touch, blending the show in the business.
Totally. And Starburns Industries, they immediately showed they could handle complex animation, not just live-action comedy.
They did the stop-motion Community episode, right? The Christmas one.
Yeah, in their very first year.
Yeah.
And they won an Emmy for it. Outstanding achievement in animation right out of the gate.
Wow. So they became a real player in adult animation pretty quickly.
A significant engine. They were crucial in getting Rick and Morty off the ground. They also produced Charlie Kaufman's Anomalisa.
The stop-motion film, that was them.
Yep. Oscar nominated. Highly respected. They also did Bubbles, that unproduced script about Michael Jackson's chimp, and Harmon Quest, of course, and HBO's Animals.
So Harmon's structural approach wasn't just for writing, it extended to production across different animation styles.
It seems that way. He had this capacity to apply structural thinking to the whole creative and production process.
But that partnership, Starburns, it didn't last forever.
No, Harmon left the company in 2020. And our sources note that the studio's output kind of declined steadily after he left.
Suggests his vision was pretty central to their success, even if he wasn't, like, animating every frame himself.
Yeah, it seems his creative drive and structural oversight were major factors. And his focus increasingly pivoted to the absolute monster hit of his career.
Which actually started during that gap year when he was fired from Community.
Exactly, Rick and Morty.
Developed with Justin Roiland during that involuntary break. Adult Swim ordered the pilot in 2012. Show premieres December 2013.
And the premise, this brilliant but totally nihilistic inventor, Rick, dragging his anxious grandson, Morty, on these insane interdimensional adventures, it was the perfect vehicle for infinite story circles. Cosmic chaos contained by episodic structure.
And it just exploded, became a cultural phenomenon almost instantly. It proved his structure could handle, like, universe-level stakes just as easily as Community college relationship drama.
Absolutely. And the network's faith in it was just massive. Remember in 2018, Adult Swim renewed it for 70 more episodes?
That's
Unprecedented.
70! That's insane commitment. And Harmon voices Bird Person, right?
It is. Recurring character. Iconic voice.
There was that Collider interview that really nailed the show's success, didn't it? It said it was the marriage of two things.
Right. Harmon's adeptness for structure and character,
Providing the reliable engine.
combined with co-creator Justin Roiland's insanely creative / sometimes insane mind.
Yeah. Like, Harmon built the perfect circular train track, and Roiland just threw every possible obstacle, monster, and alternate dimension onto it.
That's a great way to put it. And that structure, that Harmon-provided framework, really proved its resilience recently.
You mean with the situation with Roiland?
Yeah. In January 2023, Roiland was dismissed from the show following domestic violence charges. Harmon became the sole showrunner.
And we should definitely note, just for factual clarity, that Roiland was later clear of those charges. The case was dismissed due to insufficient evidence.
Absolutely critical point. But during that period of uncertainty, the show continued. The structural stability that Harmon provided allowed Rick and Morty to keep going, almost without missing a beat, even with such a major change.
And his work just keeps coming. The industry clearly still believes in his ability to deliver these structurally sound, popular shows. He launched Krapopolis recently.
Right. Set in ancient Greece. Fox greenlit that back in 2020.
And the commitment from Fox on that one is huge too, isn't it?
It's immense. The show premiered in 2023, but they'd already renewed it through season 5 before season 3 even premiered.
Wow. That's betting big on the creator.
Yeah.
It really cements his position as, like, one of the key structural minds in TV right now.
No question.
We should also quickly mention that other project, the Kurt Vonnegut adaptation, The Sirens of Titan.
Ah, yeah. Announced back in 2017. Not many updates since around 2021, but the fact he was tackling that book.
Which is so Vonnegut heavy on fatalism, free will, cosmic absurdity, interventions.
It just underlines the kind of philosophical depth he's always reaching for, even within the comedy structures. Fits his preoccupations perfectly.
So to really get the full picture of Harmon's work, we kind of have to look at the person behind it too, the writer, the public figure. His creative voice seems so tied up with his identity.
Very much so. And that intersection where the personal meets the artistic, it became really clear when he was writing a specific character on Community.
Abed Nadir.
Exactly. While he was developing Abed, researching the traits, Harmon started to see parallels. He began to suspect he might share some of those characteristics himself.
And he eventually concluded he was on the autism spectrum after seeing a doctor.
That's right. It was a significant self-discovery, and he said it was crucial for his understanding of himself and his writing. He specifically said, "I started to discover that I had a lot more in common with Abed than I did with Jeff Winger."
Wow. And you can really feel that insight in his work, can't you? The authenticity in portraying characters who are maybe brilliant logically but feel kind of emotionally isolated or process the world differently. It adds this layer of vulnerability.
Absolutely. And that complexity, that mix of logic and vulnerability, it's also reflected in the huge range of things that influenced him creatively. It's not just one thing.
Yeah, the list is pretty wild. High culture, low culture.
It's a fantastic mix. He talks about classic, structurally complex films like RoboCop.
Love RoboCop.
And Network. Patty Chayefsky. Then foundational TV like Cheers. The writing on Cheers is incredible. And the surrealism of Twin Peaks.
Okay, that makes sense. And books.
Leans towards the absurd, the philosophical. Vonnegut, again, Slaughterhouse-Five. And critically for Rick and Morty, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, he specifically cited Adams' work as an influence on the show's scale, the interdimensional travel, the tone.
But then there's really unexpected ones, too. Like, didn't he talk about an evolutionary anthropologist?
Yeah, Elaine Morgan, and specifically her work on the aquatic ape hypothesis.
The what now?
It's this less mainstream idea about human evolution involving an aquatic phase. Harmon called it a peaceful, interesting, mythical concept.
Okay, that's definitely esoteric, but it shows how he finds inspiration everywhere, right? Pulling narrative ideas from science, even French science, history, pop culture, building his unique worlds.
Exactly. But this very public, very complex personality. It's also meant he's faced some intense public scrutiny over his conduct. And how he's handled that, how he's addressed accountability, that's become part of his public story, too.
Right. The most significant incident involved Megan Gantz, who was a writer on Community. In 2018, she spoke about his behavior towards her.
Yeah, she detailed his inappropriate advances and how he treated her after she rejected them. It was a really serious situation.
And Harmon's response was unusual for a public figure, wasn't it? He addressed it directly on his podcast, Harmontown.
He did. He gave this really lengthy, detailed apology. Didn't shy away from specifics. He talked about making the advances, admitted he mistreated her, retaliated professionally because his ego was hurt. It was raw, uncomfortable listening.
But crucially, what was Gantz's reaction to that apology?
That's the important part. She publicly accepted it. She said she felt vindicated by him taking responsibility so thoroughly and publicly. She actually called it a masterclass in how to apologize. So the transparency, however difficult, was ultimately seen by the person he harmed as a sincere attempt at making amends.
Okay. Then there was another controversy around the same time, 2018, involving an old video resurfacing, the Daryl skit from 2009.
Yeah. That was a parody of the show, Dexter. And it involved Harmon simulating, well, a disturbing scenario with a baby doll. It was widely condemned as offensive, distasteful.
How did he handle that one?
He responded pretty quickly. Public apology, called the content distasteful, said he realized it was inappropriate soon after making it and had removed it himself back then. Adult Swim, his network for Rick and Morty, they criticized the video but said they were satisfied with his apology.
There was some confusion at the time, though, about why he deleted his Twitter account right around then. People linked it to the skit backlash.
Right. That was widely reported, but incorrectly, it seems. Harmon later clarified he actually deleted Twitter in solidarity with James Gunn, the director, who'd just been fired by Disney over old controversial tweets. So the timing was coincidental, according to him.
Okay, so despite all this turbulence, the personal controversies, the self-inflicted drama sometimes, his actual creative output keeps getting recognized at the highest levels.
Definitely. The awards confirm the impact. His most consistent recent recognition has been for Rick and Morty, obviously.
2 Emmys for Outstanding Animated Program, right? 2018 and 2020, as executive producer.
Yep. Thoroughly deserved for the show's quality and impact. But what really shows his range, I think, is that other Emmy win. Much earlier, much more specific.
Which one was that?
2009. Outstanding Original Music and Lyrics for the Hugh Jackman opening number at the Oscars.
Wait, he wrote the lyrics for Hugh Jackman's opening number at the Academy Awards?
He co-wrote them, yeah. Won an Emmy for it. So he's an Emmy-winning comedy writer, an Emmy-winning animation producer, and an Emmy-winning lyricist. That's quite a range.
That's incredible versatility. And didn't Community get nominated for a different kind of major award? Not an Emmy.
Yeah. He and Chris McKenna were nominated for a Hugo Award. That's the big award for science fiction and fantasy literature and media.
For which episode?
For writing Remedial Chaos Theory. The dice roll episode again. It shows that the sci-fi and fantasy community recognized the sheer craft and structural gamesmanship in that episode as being top-tier genre writing.
Wow. And just to bring it full circle, back to life, imitating art, or maybe feeling it, he's engaged to Cody Heller, another writer.
Right. And she actually adapted a real-life experience she had with Harmon into a TV series called Dummy, starring Anna Kendrick.
So once again, for Dan Harmon, life is source material. And the story circle is probably structuring the narrative of his own life, whether he plans it or not.
It really feels that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the synthesis, pulling it all together.
Yeah.
The big takeaway about Dan Harmon.
Which is this paradox, right?
Exactly. He's this brilliant creator who finds incredible success by imposing this rigid, almost mythic structure, the story circle, onto these premises that are often deeply chaotic, cynical, even nihilistic sometimes. Like Rick and Morty.
His mind somehow finds this reliable, repeatable symmetry within existential absurdity. It's quite something.
So hopefully we've given you the map today. You can see now how these incredibly successful, complex stories aren't just, spontaneous genius. They're built on a foundation of these 8 simple, repeatable steps.
The story circle.
The story circle. And understanding that structure, that mechanism, it leads us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on.
Okay, let's hear it.
If Harmon's application of the story circle to television means that step 8, the change, always has to kind of reset things, return the character close to where they started, specifically to ensure that longevity, that infinite renewability over a finite conclusion.
Right, keep the show going forever.
Does that inherently mean that the most commercially successful television shows, structurally speaking, are the ones that are essentially designed to force their characters, like Rick and Morty, to just repeat the same fundamental painful lessons over and over and over again?
Just maybe in a slightly different dimension or with slightly different side characters forever. Is that the engine of endless TV?